They pressed forward, even as they were cut down, itching to gain range of their choppas. Before any of them got close enough, Dante opened up with the perdition pistol, dropping the sub-boss that had been directing the pack, then pointed the shaft of the axe mortalis at a tank next to him. This time, though, the demolitions officers didn't just detonate a single charge, but all the ones they had left. Several dozen explosions, ranging in size from a single frag grenade going off to an anti-building charge detonating, tore holes in the orc ranks. The snipers and gunners along the sides of the canyon were only happy to oblige the demo men in their midst, attacking the orcs near the edges of the holes in the green mass, forcing them further and further apart. Dante took the chance and dove, his jump bank humming as loud as a bane blade, and landed mere inches from the frontmost orc. Without even a pause, he lifted the axe mortalis and cleaved the beast clean in half. He fired the perdition pistol over the falling body, melting an orc from the knees up. The greenskin horde was committed now. The forward army the sub-boss had led now fully contained in the canyon. The troops that had been pulled away from the canyon walls by enemy fire sidles away, hurrying out of sight of the orcs to the dam. The ones whose positions were uncompromised maintained their fire, though that was a smaller group now. Several of the demo men crawled forward, adding their fire to the others, to replace the ones who had withdrawn. Dante triggered his jump pack for an instant, jumping over the heads of the assault marines who had formed up behind him, and shouldered a spot in the line open. He slid into the gap, noting how his fellow marines were doing. Several looked to be damaged, though none had fallen yet, and fired off a few rounds from his unique melta pistol to discourage the greenies. He had killed so many thus far, and still had 3 more tricks to play. "Now, men!" he said into his vox, and the assault marines jumped as one, himself included, streaking upwards in a red and gold line. The orcs surged forward, but it was too late, and they weren't in time to stop the Astartes from darting away. The marines tilted their jump packs backward and soared back to where they had stood before, dropping prone in front of the rows of logs and leaves that covered the dam. The chapter master himself stood atop one carefully placed log and stared at the orcs, who were adjusting their aim as fast as only orcs could. The guardsmen on the canyon lips were doing marvelous work, coordinating through the platoon leaders. Dante opened the vox channel. "Brother Lieutenant, now is the time." "Yes, brother," the reply came, with a suddenness that shocked even the orcs. The 20 assault terminators who had been concealed near the second bunch of fallen rocks lunged forward, hacking at the orcs that forced their way through the gap with their lightning claws. The 4 sergeants who had been leading the group led the charge, firing the cyclone missiles Dante had specifically ordered mounted on their suits. The missiles slammed into the packed ranks of orcs, and even as they turned to face the new threat, or ignored it completely, in the case of the ones lost in their bloodlust, the second group of 40 assault veterans fired up their own jump packs, gliding forward to land in front of the suddenly distracted orc horde, and began hacking away with obscene gusto. Dante waved his axe in the air, and the first 40 marines launched themselves forward, landing beside their brothers and throwing themselves into the fray. The guard troops noted that the front lines of orcs had ground to a halt, still dozens of meters from the dam, and shifted their fire accordingly, aiming specifically for the orcs trying to cross the 2 choke points that the demolition charges had created. Orcs fell by the dozens, but the pressure against the Blood Angels was significant, and several were forced back at a pace or 3. Dante saw, out of the corner of his eye, the gaps in their line begin to form as they lost ground. He opened the channel to the sanguinary guard who were still waiting patiently atop the dam. "Abandon the lights, brothers, and join us, now!" "Aye, sir," the captain said, and he fired his jump pack up, swooping down on a distant fight. He hefted his massive glaive and fired his wrist-mounted bolter at the orc horde, which was now down to less than an eighth of the 5,000 that had marched into the canyon. His companions responded in kind, and though they were too far away to actually target anything specifically, their strategy of firing at anything green seemed to be effective. They dropped heavily into the middle of the orc pack, swinging their ancient power weapons in shimmering blue arcs, cleaving orcs as if they were as fragile as teacups. The nearest orcs turned to face the new threat, but it was too late. If they were close enough to hit the sanguinary guard, they were too close to avoid the power blade. The Terminators waded in, slicing at the green bodies that charged at them blindly. The pressure relieved, the 80 assault marines switched back to their bolters, picking off the orcs that got past the guard barrage. After nearly 2 minutes, which was nowhere near enough to cut the orcs down completely, Dante suddenly fired up his own jump pack and lifted off towards the dam. As one, the other 108 Blood Angels triggered their own packs, soaring off after their chapter master. The orc horde surged after them, firing wildly, but by some miracle or fact of orcish physiology, managed to miss entirely. The rearmost guard units were running out of targets to shoot now, and abandoned their positions, running towards the dam. The orcs found their range, and charged forward, the hundreds of them still standing blazing away at the red-armored Astartes. Dante raised the clenched fist, and gave the final order of the battle. Jump! The Astartes troops fired their jump axe yet again and soared above the dam. The engine seer flipped the switch on top of the dam and sprinted away as fast as his augmetic legs could take him. The orcs slowed their charge as it occurred to them that there was no way to follow. Before any of them could do anything about it though, the artificial log slide gave away and the water that had been backed up the entire time broke free, crashing into the front wave of orcs like a tidal wave. The orcs were swept back towards the two rock barricades, their horde reduced to mere dozens, easy pickings for the guard units that were still standing along the edges of the canyon. When the orcs washed by, roaring and shouting as if it helped, the guard was there, picking them off with glee. Of the 5,000 orcs that entered that canyon, not one lived until noon.